So now this great big demonic spider has gone down to 110 points. Could this be one of the go-to choices for Chaos Marine demon engines? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're descending into the realm of Chaos and taking a look at the new and improved Venomcrawler. It got a fairly decent points drop in the chapter approved book. It's down to 110 points from 130. With that in mind, we'll take a quick look over its datasheet, talk a bit more about its damage output and synergy with other units, and how I might think about using them in a Chaos Space Marine list. In the lore, Venomcrawlers, like all demon engines, are created by a fusion of warpsmiths and chaos sorcerers or masters of possession, summoning demonic entities and then welding them into a biomechanical shell to do the biddings of those that summoned it. Venomcrawlers in particular have a bulbous sarcophagus for storing spare warp energy, and the parasitic entities within are driven to hunt down and devour other warp entities, using their empiric energy to both fuel their excruciator cannon weapons, and also as repositories for the warpsmiths and sorcerers, both to fuel more demon engines with the stored energy, and also weaken the fabric of reality, allowing summoning rituals to become less costly. The model itself is a bit unusual within the Chaos Space Marine lineup. It's only available in the Start Collecting Chaos Space Marines box, which does remain one of the cheapest and easiest ways to jump into Chaos Space Marines, though all the models within are monopos. As deals go from Games Workshop though, for getting points directly on the table, it is perhaps one of the best, and if you're interested in landing one at a discount, I'd just like to mention that the channel's Element Games link is in the video description. It gives you 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's purchases, and a small amount goes to help support the channel if you buy anything after clicking. Just something to consider if you were thinking about picking up one of these beasties. In-game, the Venomcrawler is an 110 point heavy support slot for Codex Chaos Space Marines. It is only for the core Chaos Codex though. Unfortunately, Thousand Suns and Death Guard can't field them. For your investment, you get a fairly durable vehicle, and it can attack both at range and in melee. It's got a 10-inch movement, weapon skill and ballistic skill 4+, strength 6, toughness 7, 10 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 8 and a 3+ save. As a demon engine, it also gets a 5+ invul save, and it will regenerate 1 wound in every turn that it's injured but left alive. This does make the Venomcrawler pretty sturdy. 10 wounds with a reasonable save and invul is pretty good going. It's fairly fast as well, although it does degrade slightly problematically, losing both strength and attacks values, so it won't be anywhere near as strong when it's down to only a couple of wounds left, at least in melee. Each Venomcrawler is equipped with Soulflare tendrils, eviscerating claws, and 2 excruciator cannons that it can attack with at range. Those excruciator cannons are 36-inch range, assault D3 weapons with strength +2, AP -2 and damage D3. So when they're fresh, it's typically going to be attacking with a strength of 8, and if it really needs to, it can both advance and fire these if it wants to rush towards melee that little bit quicker. In melee, it gets 4 attacks, 5 with Hateful Assault. They're also done at strength 8, AP -3 and a flat damage 3, and then on top of that it gets a couple of attacks with its Soulflare tendrils, which are strength 6, AP -2 and damage 2. Probably best against elite infantry, can do a bit of work against vehicles too. From there, it's got a few other special rules. Its Devourer of Souls rule means that if you kill any models in the fight phase, you get to regenerate 1 wound after you've done so, a pretty handy addition to its normal regeneration. It's got a Reservoir of Demonic Energy, which allows you to summon things just a little bit easier with nearby Masters of Possession, though it's not really all that helpful seeing as summoning is quite weak in 9th. And then it has a Soul Shredding Explosion, which means that it explodes on a 5+ rather than a 6, and showers every model within 6 inches with D3 mortal wounds. That does make it just a little bit more risky to have lots of things nearby. Ideally, you'd want this to be blowing up in your opponent's face and not in yours. Otherwise, it has all the keywords that you'd expect. It's a vehicle, demon and demon engine unit. It gets a Legion keyword and also takes a Mark of Chaos. For its damage output, it is fairly generalist both at shooting and in melee, though it does far more damage in melee than it does at range. With a few Venomcrawler shooting, you'll do around about 2 wounds on average to Space Marine vehicles each, though that can get a fair bit better with buffs, or kill around about 1 power armoured Space Marine. Melee's a little bit more threatening at least. You do around 4 wounds to standard vehicles, or 1 or 2 dead Space Marines, and just a tiny bit better than this if you are getting an extra attack with Hateful Assault. In general, I wouldn't be relying on these to be the main damage dealers though. Their usefulness as a tanking unit seems far better than their offense. As tends to be the case with Chaos, and particularly with codexes that don't have a core keyword going on yet, there are an absolute ton of options that you could use to buff the Venomcrawler if you wanted to. I'd say the top of the list though in terms of value would be a Master of Possession, kind of handily packaged in that same box that comes with the Venomcrawler, so you should have them about. and he can cast Cursed Earth, which gets them up to a 4+ invul. That's getting ridiculously tanky for the points now. And then use Infernal Power, which will give demon engines within 6 inches reroll 1s to hit and wound. That's an extra around 36% damage buff. Could make a trio of these far less of an incidental threat in the shooting phase. Another option is Sacrifice for a bit of healing on them, particularly as you get more wounds if you take some wounds off a Warpsmith, but in general I don't really see that quite competing with the first two. Perhaps the next best option is the Lord Discordant for a +1 to hit aura for demon engines. Again, that's another +33% damage output, never mind all the damage that the Lord itself can do when it gets to combat too. Otherwise, in theory, you could get things like a Warpsmith for repairs, Chaos Lords or Abaddon for rerolls, Greater Possessed for +1 strength, which is kind of a marginal benefit really. Sorcerers could give you Warp Time, Prescience or Diabolic Strength, plus make them tougher with god-specific powers, but to be honest I think those buffs are probably better on other units, not on Venomcrawlers. And it's the same for the Dark Apostle prayers. You could make them -1 to hit or +1 to hit for shooting, but I think it makes sense to use those buffs on other things. It seems to me that 2 or 3 of these alongside a Master of Possession seems quite efficient, and you get a pretty good return for your character. Stratagems wise, with demon engines, the Demon Forge one is pretty excellent. 4 rerolls to hit and wound in a phase is significantly more damage. For example, on a completely unbuffed Venomcrawler, you go from dealing around about 4 or 5 wounds to a toughness 7 vehicle in the fight phase, all the way up to 9 or 10. Being able to flex into some really good damage output exactly when you need it just makes the Venomcrawler battle line that bit more usable. There is also the Blasphemous Machines stratagem, which means that you could advance and shoot normally with the Excruciator cannons. Though the damage increase here is absolutely tiny, it's really nothing compared with that Demon Forge. For legions, most things won't really do all that much for them. They aren't bikes, infantry or hellbrutes, so won't get a trait, and a lot of the options that do work with them give them some kind of marginal benefits anyway. By far one of the best legions with demon engines are the Iron Warriors though. They've got quite a nice Siege Master's Warlord trait, which allows nearby demon engines reroll 1s to wound. You could use Tank Hunters to amp up their shooting, though maybe it isn't the most efficient on the Venomcrawler. But in particular the Unholy Vigour stratagem is pretty handy. Just to trade out 1 command point for 3 wounds worth of healing could mean that between that and their natural regeneration, these Venomcrawlers just grow back all the wounds that they just lost. Finally, if you're not playing any Grand Tournament missions or anything, you could potentially think about the Soulforged Hunting Pack. That's a Vigilus Specialist attachment with a few benefits for things like Lord Discordants or Masters of Possession, and it could give a Venomcrawler the ability to advance and charge with a stratagem. So how would I think about using Venomcrawlers in-game then? Just off the bat, 330 points does seem very cheap indeed, for 30 wounds worth of toughness 7 with a 5+ invul, and potentially a 4+ if a Master of Possession is about. You could maybe run 2 or 3 of them alongside a Master of Possession, and maybe a Lord Discordant if you were really going all in on the tactic. I think their damage output is a bit mediocre both in range and at melee, but at least they can deal damage in both. Their damage output's pretty generalist, so it's going to be effective no matter what you shoot at, and it can get far better if you add in a Lord Discordant, Infernal Power, and particularly Demon Forge in melee. They seem like a good option for just trotting up into the centre of the board, forcing your opponent to try and deal with them and gun them down, and hopefully take a fair bit of pressure off the rest of the force. For weaknesses, with those big bases, they're perhaps just a little bit hungry for space. On most boards I think you'd struggle to use 3 of them in tandem, making me think that maybe 2 of them going with one of the characters might be a more optimal option. If you don't have a Lord Discordant, -1 to hit modifiers are going to punish them hard, and if you do start to lose Venomcrawlers to enemy shooting while they're still all bunched up, their explosions could potentially be pretty annoying. I think it could be pretty painful if you roll a 5 or 6 and then shower a bunch of your nearby units with mortal wounds, doubling the blow of losing a vehicle early. Comparison wise, I think they do stack up pretty well against the other demon engines now. For melee demon engines, they're competing against Defilers, Mauler Fiends and Lords Discordant, and I think they're a fairly solid alternative option. They will do less damage than these. Defilers have fairly heavy range damage, Mauler Fiends and Lords Discordant have really heavy melee damage, but the Venomcrawlers have the best durability of the lot, and with some damage at range and in melee, they don't particularly have to rush in to engage the enemy, and they can play a bit more cagey if they want to. In any case, it'll be interesting to see if people experiment with them. I feel they're a unit that a fair few Chaos players might have lying around due to being in Shadow Spear and that excellent start collecting box. So let me know what you think of the Venomcrawler down in the comments below. Are they now perhaps the best demon engine for Chaos Space Marines, or do you still feel they're outcompeted by Defilers or Mauler Fiends? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I will certainly keep on trying to cover any updates for Chaos Space Marines as we go on, and I will review their codex when it's out for 9th. I've no doubt that these guys will enjoy getting their 3+ to hit. Finally, if you would like to help support the channel, I would just like to mention that Element Games affiliate link down in the video description. If you were thinking about buying any Warhammer in the near future, Element Games is a UK-based discount retailer. They give between 10 and 20% off Games Workshop's miniatures, and if you order anything after clicking the link, a small amount goes to help support the channel without costing you any more whatsoever. Can just be a way to help out if you were thinking about buying something anyway. For people over in the USA and Canada, I also do have a very similar Amazon link as well. That one works just the same. Click the link and literally buy anything off Amazon at all, and a small amount goes to help keep the channel going. Again, can just be a way to help out if you were buying something anyway. In any case, an absolutely massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.